Say hey.
Howdy, Outlaws. Welcome to Cott County, Tennessee. Back in our little holla this afternoon on July the 4th of 2020. Happy Independence Day. A little piece of history. Really, today is not Independence Day. It's just a day that we celebrate it. The Founding Fathers that signed the Declaration of Independence. Signing actually started on the 2nd. And John Adams thought that we should celebrate Independence Day on the 2nd.
Why?
Because that's the day the first signature went on the paper. So as far as he was concerned, that was Independence Day.
So you should celebrate when you start instead of when you finish.
That was John Adams' theory.
I bet his wife was thrilled.
Now, the truth of the matter is that the final signature went on to the Declaration of Independence on July the 3rd, late in the evening. It was already July the 4th in England. And that's the reason the Declaration of Independence says July the 4th. Because they wanted to be official. The king would have looked at it as, well, they didn't really sign it on the 3rd, they signed it on the 4th, blah, 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 because, well, that's the way the fucking English are.
Don't insult the English.
Okay, we're not the English people, but the English.
English?
The English.
Is that like hangry?
That's kind of like hangry.
But I digress. Okay, so happy Independence Day. Be all independent. I'll be over here being independent with my wine.
And with my apple pie.
They say apple pie is American,
Apple pie is American.
I don't know that they meant that apple pie.
It's still apple pie.
So, why don't we tell everybody about our little place in the woods?
So, we are about as far up in our hollow as you can go. There's one spot above us. As far as where people can stay. Now granted, the holler goes quite a ways on up. It's just not livable much farther up than here.
I could live up there.
We are roughly 10 degrees cooler here at our house than down in town, which is super nice because I was down in town just a little bit earlier and it was already 96 degrees at about 11 o'clock.
Oh, but we get such a nice breeze.
And we do have a nice constant little breeze that blows through here. We have a creek in the front yard. I've never seen the creek dry up, even in the worst drought that I've seen since we've been living up here.
Oh
There's
God,
still
knock
water.
on some wood. You know how superstitious I am.
Knock on wood. This beautiful cedar table that Raven made.
Thank you.
So we enjoy our little spot up here. It's a little bit cooler in the summer. Of course, that also means it's a little bit colder in the winter.
Yeah, that's a drawback. We get snow when nobody else gets snow.
Driving out of our hollow, there's a thermal belt, literally. There can be snow here, and literally you pass this point and there is no snow.
Yeah, it's strange. The first time I ever saw it, I was driving down and I'm like, who shut off the snow machine? What happened?
And it's like that. Anytime that it's light snow up here and we get this little dusting up here or something, you go 1.5 miles out of our hollow. We're about 3.5 miles in. But about 1.5 miles going out, it just changes. The weather changes. It can be sunny at that point and be raining to beat the band up here.
Okay, so some of you have been following our progress with the garden. Because of this thermal belt, it makes it really unpredictable to grow food. You can ask your neighbors, you can ask people who live down the way advice for the garden, but it doesn't really work because they don't live in the exact spot where we live.
Our tomatoes traditionally don't start coming off until the end of July at the earliest, mid-August as a
Late
norm.
August.
And any tomatoes that we've ever had, primarily, we still have tomatoes on the vines when we get our first frost in sometimes as early as late September. We usually still have tomatoes on the vine until October. And craziest growing situation I've ever seen up here. According to the almanac, we are in area
7, but we have a microclimate of 6B.
So
Not much of a gardener yet. I'm working on it.
Probably the best garden this year we've ever had. We grow a whole lot in a very small space. We've got a bunch of tomatoes going this year, which unfortunately Raven can't eat tomatoes.
I can process them into sauce and can that though, and we do have a lot of meals with spaghetti sauce.
And her mom has a banging tomato sauce recipe for spaghetti sauce. Like, after it's way better than anything that you'll go and buy out of a store, for sure.
Well, one of the reasons we bought this place, first of all, it was the right price in the right location, and with the right amount of space. There's some things I don't necessarily care for about it, but you know, give and take. And I'm glad to live here. It's a work in progress. I call it my 50-year project.
It might be done in 50 years.
Oh, no, I'll be dead. It gives me something to do until I'm dead. So, you know. One of the things that we learned when we first moved here is our house is historical. We had no idea that we live in a historical house. It wasn't sold to us as historical. We didn't have any of the background on it. It was a foreclosure. So when we got in here and started doing some digging around, we found it had great historical significance in our area. Not anything too big. So
Yeah, we found out. So this whole area where we live, at one point in time, was a resort area. Like, the only people that owned property up in this area back in those days were the uber wealthy. We are not uber wealthy.
no, not at all.
Most of our neighbors are not uber wealthy. But the resort, up until the 60s even, people would come up here in the summertime because it was cooler. There's the creek that runs through here. And at the edge of our property, there's an old broken dam. It actually sits on the property above ours. It doesn't sit on our property, but it's right on the edge of our property.
I think you did a video up there once.
I did a video up there once.
Okay, so go ahead.
And so that old broken dam created the swimming hole for the resort, so to speak. Well, in 1933, a flood broke that dam. Did away with the swimming hole for the area.
Do you have any idea how high the water was in that flood?
No clue. I would say to break that dam as thick as that dam is, it would have probably been in our yard.
Oh yeah, it would have blown the whole swimming pool out.
Well, the pool wasn't here yet then.
Oh, that's right.
So what happened is the lady that owned the property that we now live on, her name was Luella Kiker. She had a pool dug in what is now our front yard and diverted the creek into the pool and then back out of the pool back into the creek bed. And this was the swimming hole for the resort then. And it was the very first pay-to-swim swimming pool in Cotton County, Tennessee. So the downstairs of our house was the pool house. And then the rest of the house got added on. According to our deed, it would have been added on in the 60s. Because I believe our deed says the house was built in 1966.
And remodeled in 1978, I think.
I believe that is what it says.
That's where we got all the paneling.
The beautiful, beautiful 1970s painting.
No, just no.
We're working on that too. It's another part of the
50-year project.
50-year plan. The downstairs, though, was part of the pool house. So it was built 1933 to 1934. And back in 1933, 1934, for a nickel, you could come up here and swim all day. You got a Coke, you got a towel, and you got a locker.
That's a lot of things for a freaking nickel.
It's a lot of things for a nickel. I mean, there's a lot. You can't buy nothing for a nickel anymore, really. Give it up.
I don't think I can get anything for a nickel. I was thinking about those machines that people, put the coins in the children and then they get something out of them, but I think they're all 25 cents now.
Those were 25 cents when I was a kid. They're probably 75 cents now.
That's just sad. So anyway, nothing for a nickel. Please continue.
So, anyway, the folks that own this property right before us had the pool filled in.
Well, they did get an estimate. They wanted to fix it. They wanted it to be nice, but it was going to cost $100 grand. And really, in the 70s, who has $100 grand?
And so the pool is no longer in our front yard. We think that we have found pieces of it here and there where there's actually a hole that has started to form in our front yard that is definitely feeding into what used to be the pool, no questions asked.
I hate that hole.
There seems to be a piece of concrete there, which surprises me because my understanding is that the pool was totally rock lined. Didn't necessarily have anything to do with concrete, but I guess maybe stuff had to be cemented together.
I don't know. It could be just concrete that they threw in there for fill.
Very well could be concrete that is through it for fill.
So, some of the things that we found on the property, besides that horrible hole that keeps popping up, we found that warming seat. We think it's a warming seat.
It's an old cast iron stove that has rock built up around it. And then there's a smokestack built onto it. It wasn't, your normal cast iron stove piping. It's definitely a concrete smokestack that's built around it. And actually it says Llewellyn Kiker, September 1959.
I thought it was 58.
58. It's 58, you're
58.
right. 1958. Found that overgrown with English ivy. And let me tell you, we got the freaking English ivy.
Another 50-year project. All of the ivy.
Another reason to hate the English.
Don't
They're
hate
ivy.
the English.
They're ivy. It's taken over everything here, let me tell you. We've also found rock work under the ivy. I think I found the old house bed is what I think I found, clearing ivy out. And I'll let Raven tell you about what she found when she was planting the rose bush.
So there was a tree that was cut in front of our house, and
A huge hemlock. Like the stump is every bit of that big around.
maybe not that big.
I'm a raft guy. I exaggerate a little bit. It's probably really about that big. But
A little smaller. So anyway, there's this tree stump out there, and I wanted to plant a rose at the base of it, to pretty it up, as much as you can pretty up a stump. So I go to dig this hole, and the shovel comes out with a big wad of cloth. It was a piece of a button-up man's shirt, and it had a hatchet head wrapped inside of it. And I unrolled the shirt, and it looked like there may have been bloodstains on it. I couldn't tell. I wasn't going to tell. I mean, I don't have those DNA tests or anything, but it was very suspicious looking. And the hatchet head had been busted off of the
handle.
handle. So, but it wasn't
that hammery thing.
Yeah, that hammery thing. So it wasn't busted off like you would hit something and go to chop it and it would just, break. It was kind of broken the other way, like if you put it across your knee and tried to break it. And that kind of freaked me out, so I wrapped that shit back up and stuffed it back where it went, and I planted a rose on top of it, said, "Oh, excuse me, I don't know why you're here, I don't want to know."
Now, I don't know whether you guys believe in ghosts, spirits, haunts.
I do.
All those things. I do. No questions asked. There is a lady that I have seen here. I think I have 4 times now that I have seen a lady in the house.
Okay, so when was the first time you noticed that something was weird with the house? For me, it was the dimes.
I would say the first. We hadn't been here a year yet. The first time I saw the lady.
So for me, probably the first month or 2 that we were here, I started noticing something strange. As you do, you clean up your new house and you get ready and you fix things and, you do the whole nesting thing. Anybody who's ever moved into a new place does this. I was doing all the normal things, but I kept finding these dimes everywhere. I think it started about maybe 3 months into living here. I would find a dime, and then I would find another dime. Sometimes I would find as much as $1 in dimes in a day. And the house kept giving me dimes, and I thought, well, this is really strange. I tend to be very sensitive to hearing dead people, but I hadn't heard anything. They were being very quiet if there was any here. In fact, when we bought the house, I remarked that I was pretty relieved that nobody would be bothering me, in that particular way. But then I started getting all these dimes. I said, this is really strange. I asked everyone, did you leave a dime? Did you lose any money? Nobody has that many dimes. So then he saw a woman.
I went to walk into the bathroom. And standing in the bathroom, there was a woman standing there.
And what did she look like?
She was older.
Did she have clothes on?
She did have clothes on.
What was she dressed in?
Kind of like you would expect a woman from, say, the 50s to be dressed. A blouse. And I can't recall slack, skirt, whatever on that. But it was definitely a blouse. And then she just faded into nothing. And then a little while after that, I was in the kitchen downstairs. And there's a window in the kitchen looking out, but you can see the reflection back through the living room to the stairs. And I saw someone come down the stairs. And I thought it was our son, Galen. And I turned around to start to talk to him. There was nobody there.
Right?
Probably the craziest thing to date, though, is about a week ago, I was right out here in the woods and doing hillbilly things. And there was a woman's voice behind me that said, "Can you help me?" So I spun around, expecting to see Raven standing there.
I was busy.
And there was absolutely no one there.
Yeah, he came running in the house. He's like, "Were you just outside?" I said, "No, I was not outside. What's wrong with you? You're all sweaty." And he said, "There was a woman." "What woman?" He's, "No, a woman's voice. I thought it was you. She asked me for help." I said, "Well, did you help her?" He said, "No, there was no woman. It was the ghost." I said, "Oh."
That's all I could figure, is it was the ghost.
So, like, the second thing I noticed when we moved here, besides the dimes, was the phantom phone.
Oh, the freaking phantom phone. That is...
So,
to this day, we have not figured out what the freaking phantom phone is, and we've now lived here for 5 freaking years.
So you'll just hear this phone ringing, but it's an old-fashioned phone ring. It's not any kind of digital sound.
Like the old ringing bell, the phone that rang with a little clanker popping back and forth between the bells.
Yeah. And it seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Like we can be standing near each other, and one of us will hear it and the other one will not hear it. Or we'll think it comes from 2 different directions if we both hear it. Very strange.
And I think that most time it comes from the breezeway between the house and the apartment. That's where I think it comes from. It's where I've heard it at the most.
I don't know. Sometimes I think it comes from the garage. Sometimes I swear it comes from the area behind us. You guys can see that there's nothing out there. So that's where I think it comes from sometimes. I don't know. And there's no rhyme or reason to when it goes off. I've heard it during the day.
Heard it at night.
Yeah, I don't know. We used to have a motion detector light when we first moved in. You know, you get little gadgets and stuff for your house. So I got this motion detector light for the breezeway because it tends to be pretty dark in there. There's no big light really unless you leave something on constantly at the top of the stairs. And that thing would go on and off all the time, but there would be nothing there. And
no cats, no dogs.
I was going to say, yes, somebody would probably say, oh, it's an animal. But I have cats and dogs that would be in the house, not outside, and they would tell me if there was something outside. But they never did. So that was kind of weird. I have seen a woman, briefly, very, very quickly out of the corner of my eye sometimes. I have seen a man. I seem to be the only one who has seen a man, and I just recently saw him at the top of the stairs. I've actually been pushed on 2 occasions.
She was talking shit about me both times.
You need shit talked about you. You know, sometimes you just have to talk shit about somebody. So, out of frustration, just like everybody always does, oh, you know, and I've gotten pushed, and I've literally felt 2 small hands, like a small person, a child maybe, at the small of my back push me. My friend Carlina was here the day that I got pushed almost into the creek. I was standing on a rock, we were both talking on rocks, and all of a sudden I was shoved from behind and pushed into the creek, but I regained my balance so I didn't fall. But that was really strange. She looked at me and she said, "Did you just get pushed?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "You looked exactly like you got pushed, but there was nothing there." And then another time I was coming down the stairs, and I actually slid down the last 2 stairs, so kind of dangerous. I suppose, you know, if I had been more feeble, that would have really sucked. Thank God I'm not more feeble.
So, the crazy thing that happens, and this happens very, very frequently. There can be something, particularly the car keys. You can lay them on the table, and you know they're laying on the table. You go to do something, and you'll come back to get your car keys because you're getting ready to go do something. And the car keys won't be there. And you know you left them on the table.
Right.
So you start looking around for them. You know, you go, you do, look over here, you look over there, and you can't find the damn car keys anywhere. Then you come back, they're laying on the table.
Yeah, that is pretty creepy.
Exactly where you knew that you left them at, but 5 minutes before they weren't there.
Yeah, I've actually been looking for things, and I've checked the same place repeatedly. And finally just given up and said to the house, "Please give me my whatever back. It's really important. I'm going to do something or whatever." And it appears, which is a little odd. I mean, the things that happen here don't seem to bother me. Do they bother you? I guess I've never really asked.
It doesn't bother me.
So, my friend Carlina, again, she lived with us for a little bit, and she had the spare bedroom next to the master bedroom. And she had a guest over one evening, and he swore that there were people watching him from the closet. Like, he was really freaked out by our house. He saw a woman standing over the bed, and, you know, he never came back by the house. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe he was drunk. I don't know. I don't know his situation. I know that you and I are not the only people that have experienced things here. We've had people stay with us before. John stayed with us. Mountain John, maybe you guys know him from some of the other videos. He stayed with us for about 2 years, and he has also seen the woman.
Yep.
Yeah. I seem to be the only one who's had experience with the man and the child, though. And there's no history to be found on this house, which is really strange.
Well, you know, now I told you that I thought the other day when I was out here working in the yard that I thought I seen a girl walking like she was walking down the driveway, and then she was gone.
No, you didn't tell me that.
I didn't tell you that.
No, you didn't tell me. You forgot to tell me. Things happen so often here, it's commonplace, I guess. So sometimes you just forget to tell me stuff. And I forget to tell you stuff. Like, ooh, what was it I was telling you earlier? Something weird happened. And I went to tell you about it, and I forgot, and then I told you about it. What the hell was that? What did happen?
Don't remember.
Shoot, I don't remember either. You know, it's just become so commonplace now that it's just something we live with. You had a friend who was going out west on a fire with you, right? And he came and he dropped his keys off. And I know that my house takes things and I don't want to be responsible, so I don't want to lose things either because I'm old. So I fucking forget things. So I have this little jar.
It's where all of our spare keys are.
Yes, all of the spare keys. And when he wanted to leave his keys, I opened the jar and I said, put your keys in the jar. He did, and I closed it back up.
So he and I drove to Oregon, and we worked a few fires together. Then we kind of went separate ways. He went to a different fire than I went to. Well, I wound up coming back to Tennessee, and then he come back a couple weeks later. And he's on his way back, and he calls me, he goes, hey man, he goes, you know, you go make sure that my van will start and all that. And so I went and got the keys, and the keys weren't there.
So I wasn't home at this time, so he calls me on the phone, panicked that I had done something with these keys. I said, they're in the key jar. I haven't touched them. Wasn't going to touch them.
They're not in the key jar.
Like, are you sure?
They're not in the key jar.
He gets really freaked out and very upset, and he says he's going to have to call a locksmith.
Have a key made.
Yeah, he's very concerned that I have done something with these keys, which I never touched, ever. So then I just said, ask the house for them back.
So I asked the house for them back. And I found them not in the house, but in Raven's mom's apartment, hanging behind the door.
Had you checked there before?
I had not checked there before. You know, I knew that they had went in the key jar.
Yeah, well, that's where I had him put them.
And they weren't in the key jar.
So anyway, I recently decided that I would try listening to the ghosts, if there's ghosts here, you know. Maybe it's magnets. Maybe aliens with magnets are moving keys. I don't know what's here. So I bought one of those EMF detectors. And no, it's not the EMF detector I bought. Which was it?
You bought the voice recorder. Right?
Oh, yeah, the
EVP recorder.
The EVP recorder. Okay, so I was mistaken. I had a choice between one or the other, you know, budget and everything. So I invested like $40 in a recording device that apparently you can hear ghosts on. We'll see what we get. That's all I've got. I don't know. I'd like to hear that woman and maybe help her if she needs some help.
What we could do to help her, you never know. What does she need help with?
I don't know. Knitting. I don't know what.
I can't help her with my knitting.
You're not much of a knitter.
No, you know, she needs some help, you know, digging some ginseng or making some liquor or something. I might could help her.
Oh. So, we found all kinds of strange and interesting historical stuff here. So maybe we'll dig up some ghost voices or something. I don't know. So anyway, that's 30 minutes on our timer. Maybe we're done, eh?
Well, outlaws, y'all have a good one. Don't do nothing I wouldn't do. I'll be seeing you, outlaws.